welcome song. Listen. We are delighted to have you in our presence this glorious day. You are welcome in this house, and we hope and pray that you will enjoy your stay. You're free to worship. You're free to worship. You're free to praise. You're free to praise. For this is the day the Lord has made. So let us rejoice and be glad in it. We want to serve and take care of you. So make yourself at home. So UBC, let me hear you say this. You're welcome. You're welcome. Welcome. You're welcome.
John chapter 8, verses 1 through 11, it says, "But Jesus went to the Mount of Olives. At dawn, he appeared again in the temple courts where all the people gathered around him. And he sat down to teach them. The teachers of the law and the Pharisees brought a woman who was caught in adultery." Somebody shout, "Caught." Y'all right, mighty docile, shout, "Caught." They made her stand before the crowd and said to Jesus, "Teacher, Rabbi, this woman was caught in the act of adultery. And in the law of Moses, it commanded us to stone such women to death. Now, Jesus, what do you have to say about this?" Now, this was a question used to trap him in order to have a basis for accusing Jesus. But Jesus bent down and started writing on the ground with his finger. When they kept on questioning him, he straightened up and stood up and said to them, "Let any one of you who is without sin be the first one to cast the first stone." And then he stooped down and wrote on the ground again. I want to use for a subject this morning, if you don't mind, I'll borrow something from my brother, the prophet and the rapper, one of my favorites, Brother T.I. And T.I. said every now and then, you got to let them know. You got to let them know. Running through the checkered flag, running through the red light, you got to let them know. As we celebrate Achievement and Graduation Sunday, I couldn't think of a better soundtrack to preach from than T.I.'s Let 'Em Know. The record of this is certainly poignant because it records his extreme confidence. It shows us his swagger. It shows us his boldness. He's a man saying, "I'm not where I used to be. Look at me now." And if we're honest, every achiever, every graduate ought to walk across that stage with a little swag and a little confidence. Because every person who survived what should have taken them out ought to have a testimony. T.I. talks about going from the streets to the charts. He talks about making it and overcoming and refusing to apologize for his success today. And it wasn't that long ago, he was on a podcast doing an interview, and he was asked to whom he attributes his success. And I followed him for a long time, but I'd never heard him say this. He said, "You know what? I have to give God the glory, and I have to thank God for bringing me from where I was to where I am right now." And he said, "That is my story." And I want to let everybody know in here that if you're under the sound of my voice, we too have a story. My story is different from your story, and your story may be different than my story. But if you are living, moving, and have your being, you have a story. Yes, we all have a story. And I want you to also know that your story is important and your story matters. Your story matters. My story matters. Our collective stories matter. Your story matters because it is crucial to the understanding of the full context of who you are. Your story is critical in order to understand who you are and why you are the way that you are. Am I talking to anybody in here? I have a story. You have a story. We all have a story. But the issue for me is, and perhaps it's not an issue for you, but it bothers me because some people think that they own the publishing rights to your story. Please understand that there are people, whether in close proximity or hanging around the periphery of your life, there are some people around you who will try to hijack your story. But I've got news for them. Somebody like T.I. ought to let them know. You ought to let them know that God has always been on the side of the oppressed. You ought to let them know that justice and mercy are inseparable. You ought to let them know that when policies oppress the poor, dehumanizes immigrants, and attempts to strip away at the identity of black and brown people, that nation stands on the wrong side of history, and that nation stands on the wrong side of God. Because you ought to let them know that God is on our side. People will try to hijack your story, but the problem with people trying to hijack your story is that it leaves room for misinterpretation, false information, and misguided interrogation. When people try to put their stories into their hands, your story tends to lose its value. But I just jumped in the chat just to let somebody sitting on your row know that you ought not ever allow anybody to devalue your story or to render your story as insignificant. I need every achiever and everybody in here to understand that your story has value, your story has meaning, and your story is significant. Your story matters. Your story matters. And here's the truth of the matter. Most people who think that they know your story could not handle the full context of your story in the first place. I wish you'd tell somebody, you better let them know, nah, you can't handle my truth. I wish I had about 5 real folks in here. Oh, God, because I've realized this, church. I've realized that people see your content, but they don't know about your context. In other words, people see your what, but they have no idea about your why. Because if you understood my why, you wouldn't assassinate me, you would celebrate me. If they understood your why, they wouldn't talk about you, they would pray for you. If they understood your why, they wouldn't tear you down, but they'd reach down and lift you up again. If they understood your why, they wouldn't just watch you struggle, but they'd help you get through your struggle. I wish I had a church in here. If you understood my why, you wouldn't just spectate when I shout, you jump up and help me shout. And is there anybody in here who's like me? I know my story is messed up. I know I've got some issues in my story. I know I got some drama in my story. I know I got some stuff in my story that's just between me and God. But is there anybody in here who's glad that we serve a God who specializes in stepping into the midst of your story, flipping the script and changing the narrative of your life? Saw the Michael Jackson movie last week, so let me moonwalk through this text. Jesus is teaching, we are right in the synagogue, and a crowd gathers around Jesus. He begins teaching, and please understand what's happening. Jesus is teaching in the temple courts early in the morning. And this is not a private conversation. This is essentially church time. People have gathered around Jesus to hear the word when suddenly the Pharisees interrupt the sermon and drag this woman into the middle of the crowd. The language of the text suggests that they forced her to stand in the middle and turned her into a public spectacle. They're not trying to counsel her. They're not trying to pray for her. They're not trying to restore her. They are weaponizing her story in order to try to trap Jesus. Because if Jesus says to stone her, he would be violating Roman law, since the Jews were not permitted to carry out capital punishment. But if Jesus says don't stone her, then he would be accused of rejecting the law of Moses, which says that adultery should be punishable by being stoned to death. That's why they questioned him when they brought her to him. Jesus, this woman was caught in adultery, and the law of Moses says that she ought to be stoned to death. What you got to say about it? Notice now the hypocrisy of the moment. According to the law of Moses, both the man and the woman should have been brought forward, but yet we only see the sister being brought forward in the temple courts. That means that the law is not being applied for justice. It is being applied to manipulate Jesus for an accusation. But Jesus refuses to play their game. Instead of answering them immediately, the text says that he bends down on the ground and begins to write in the dust of the temple courts, slowing the moment and shifting the power differential in the room. And when he finally stands, the entire narrative turns, because in that moment, Jesus let them know. While Jesus was teaching and the Pharisees showed up, and they paraded this woman in front of the crowd and made her stand in the middle before Jesus and accused her of being caught in adultery. I said she was caught in adultery. I said she was caught in adultery. I said she was caught in adultery. Somebody holler, caught. Now at first glance, she was caught, and this looks like a slam dunk case. She was caught red-handed. This is not a case of circumstantial evidence. This evidence is irrefutable. There is no room for reasonable doubt. She's guilty. She was caught, and according to the law of Moses, she's supposed to be stoned to death. The text explicitly and intentionally tells us that she got caught. But notice, if you will, up to this point, the centrality of her story is the fact that she did get caught. She got caught. And that begs me to ask you a question. And I'm being nosy right now, but can I ask you a question? No, for real. Can I ask y'all a question? The question is this: has anybody ever got caught? I wish I had a real church in here. And in this woman's case, getting caught actually brought her straight to Jesus. Can I get about 5 of y'all to testify? If you ain't ashamed, can you testify that I found mercy when I got caught? I found grace when I got caught. I recognized the true meaning of forgiveness when I got caught. I learned how to pray when I got caught. I became a worshiper when I got caught. I came back to the house of God when I got caught. I found myself laying out at the altar when I got caught. And yes, I found Jesus when I got caught. She got caught. And up to this point, the centrality of her story was the fact that she got caught. And now the Pharisees have hijacked her story. She got caught. Yeah, she got caught. But I contend that there is a contextual history in the backdrop of her story that none of them nor any of us are privy to. We see her foreground, but we don't know anything about her background. We know what she did, but we don't know why she did what she did. They knew her content, but they knew nothing about her context. They saw her for what they took her for and did not consider why she was doing what she was doing. Because I've learned that for every what, there is always a why. And we've always been led to believe that this woman was someone who had no integrity. That this woman was someone who had no self-respect. That this woman had some unholy proclivities because she was caught in the act of adultery. But has anybody ever considered that perhaps, just perhaps, she was being abused? You ever consider that perhaps she didn't do this on her own volition? She was forced. Oh, I'm talking in here. Perhaps she had some mental health issues and she was troubled. Perhaps she was just doing what she had to do in order to survive. Perhaps she was being exploited. Perhaps she had even been set up. We know her what, but who knows her why? But for whatever the reason, the centrality of her story was the fact that she got caught. And somehow the Pharisees just happened to show up at the right place at precisely the right time to catch her doing the wrong thing. Can I give about 10 of y'all a news flash this morning? There are some people hanging around you just waiting to see you mess up. I wish I had about 10 of y'all jump up and holler. I know that's right. There's some folk watching you just waiting for you to fall, waiting for you to make a mistake, waiting for you to get caught so that they can show up just to hang you out. I don't know why or how the Pharisees even knew to show up when they showed up to catch this woman doing what she did, but somebody had to be watching her. And I come to tell you, I'm about like Michael Jackson. I always feel like somebody watching me. They showed up in the middle of a story and brought her to Jesus, and they hijacked her story. They didn't even allow the sister to speak for herself. They brought her to Jesus, made her stand in front of the crowd and asked Jesus what he was going to do about this woman who was caught in adultery. And again, it wasn't about her, it was about trapping Jesus. And now you need to understand that as they were testing his allegiance, Jesus understood that by hijacking her story, it was more about them trying to get him than it ever was about trying to get her. But the text says that in an utter act of defiance, Jesus simply stooped down, took his finger, and started writing on the ground. And I don't know what he wrote, but perhaps he was letting them know that my grace is sufficient for you. I don't know what he was writing, but perhaps he was letting this woman know that surely goodness and mercy shall follow you all the days of your life. I don't know what he wrote, but perhaps he was letting her know that when the enemy comes in like a flood, the Spirit of the Lord will lift up a standard against him. Perhaps he was writing and letting her know, fret not thyself. I feel power now because of evildoers, but they shall soon be cut down. Perhaps he was writing and letting her know, stand still and see the salvation of the Lord. I don't know what he was writing. I wish I had about 5 witnesses around me in here somewhere. And anybody in here know that you serve a God who will fight your battles? You serve a God who will scatter your enemies. You serve a God. In fact, the only reason that some of y'all achieved what you achieved, and the only reason that some of you are even sitting here right now, is because one day God stood up for you. And is there anybody here who can give God praise? Because one day God stood up for you. I made it because he stood up for me. I survived it because he stood up for me. I walked through the door because he stood up for me. I fell down, but I got back up again because God stood up for me. And is there anybody here who can throw your hands in the air and wave them like you just don't care and tell God, thank you for standing up for me. Thank you, because when I thought it was all over, you stood up for me while they were accusing me. You stood up for me while they were lying on me. You stood up for me while they were gossiping about me. You stood up for me while they were scandalizing my name. You stood up for me while they were accusing me. You stood up for me. Thank you. 5 minutes he stood up, and then he decided to open his mouth and talk. He said, I tell you what, either one of y'all who is without sin, go right ahead and be my guest and cast the first stone. I need somebody to understand now that when Jesus was writing on the ground, he was letting them know he took her story out of their hands and placed her story into his hands. I wish I had somebody in here, and I don't know about you, but you ought to be glad that your story ain't in your hands, and your story isn't in my hands. Your story ain't in your mama's hands. Your story isn't in your daddy's hands. Your story isn't in the preacher's hands. Your story isn't in the government's hands. But is there anybody here who can jump up and say, I'm glad that my story is in the hands of the Lord. Jesus is the author and the finisher of my story. Nobody gets the last word over your life. And is there anybody here who can give God praise? Because when your story is in the Lord's hands, he'll turn ridicule into redemption. He'll turn condemnation into affirmation. He'll turn the gossip into grace. He'll turn your failure into favor. He'll turn your sorrow into joy. He'll turn your sickness into healing, and he'll turn your defeat into victory. And is there anybody here who can testify that when my story is in the hands of the Lord, it turned my pain into purpose. It turned my mess into my ministry. It turned trouble into triumph. It turned problems into praise. Is there anybody here? And you ought to let them know that when they count you out, just let them know when the enemy tried to end your story, Jesus turned the page. Is there anybody who can give God praise and holler, this is my story. This is my song. I'm praising my Savior all the day long. Can you give God praise? Can you give God praise? Can you give God praise and let him know that my story was headed for a breakdown, but God let him know and turned it into a breakthrough. My story was headed for destruction, but God let him know and turned it into deliverance. My story was headed for defeat, but God let him know and turned it into victory. Can I ask you a question? Won't he do it? Won't God do it? Won't God fix it? Won't he make a way out of no way. Won't he pick you up? Won't he turn you around? Won't he do it? Won't God flip the script? Won't God turn the page? Won't God open a door? Won't God make a way? Is there anybody here who can let him know that I had some good days and I've had some bad days? I've had some hills that I've had to climb, but when I look around and think things over, all of my good days outweigh my bad days, and I won't, I said I won't, I won't complain. Give your neighbor a high five and tell your neighbor you gonna be all right. Tell your neighbor you gonna get through this. Tell your neighbor you will not die in this storm. Tell your neighbor, dry your eyes and let's give God praise because we got the victory. You ought to let him know that greater is he that is in me than he that is in the world. You ought to let him know that the Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. Yes, 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 yes. Yes, yes. Take somebody by the hand and say, neighbor, let's let them know that the devil can't steal my praise. He can't steal my joy, because this joy that I have, the world didn't give it to me. Say, neighbor, excuse me, but may I have this dance? May I have this dance? Will you celebrate with me? Will you dance with me? Will you shout with me? Let's let them know. Yes, Lord.
We invite you to make a contribution to the ministry. Through your giving, we reach our community and expand his kingdom. And we recognize the one who gave us everything. To give, you can use technology. Use the Push app or go to Giving page on the Union Baptist website. Use the Cash app. $UBC 1200 trade. Use the Givelify app. Union Baptist Church, Winston-Salem. Let us show love through giving. Be sure to visit our website and follow Union Baptist Church on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube for all the latest news, events, and ministry updates.
Nobody greater, nobody greater, nobody greater, no. Nobody greater than you. Now lift those hands, singers, and let's just give him the glory.